attention to the podium.
I thought you guys were going to warm up this state for me, but maybe you already have.
Okay.
I'm going to begin this talk with what's been happening on this campus and other campuses, which is a war, first of all, on the First Amendment, on the most basic freedoms we have as Americans, the right of free speech and the right of free assembly. Particularly at a university, this is a discouraging prospect. This war on this campus, I ran an ad in your paper which stated a couple of facts. Instead of answering the facts, organizations on this campus demanded that my speech be canceled. There were 2,000 posters that were torn down before this speech. The idea is very simple. It's a very classically fascist idea, which is that there shouldn't be two sides to a question or any question. There shouldn't be discussion. People that we disagree with, we're going to silence. The organization leading this charge is the Muslim Students Association on this campus and its allies in the political left. The attacks were made also on the paper, an assault on the free press, the Post on this campus. But this isn't the only campus where this is happening. At Penn State and at the University of California, Santa Barbara campus, there's also a war on the newspapers. Newspapers are, of course, run by liberal students on both campuses. It's probably on this campus. And they fact-checked the ad. And the ad was factual. There was no hate speech in the ad. There was no religious or ethnic group attacked. It was very specifically an attack on radicals, a radical organization that poses as a cultural and religious organization. Every single response to my ad has been that I'm attacking Muslims, as though all Muslims think alike, and all Muslims must support Hamas, because the Muslim Students Associations across this country are supporters of Hamas, which is a terrorist and genocidal and racist organization. And it's not surprising that they are, because all the Muslim Students Associations were created, or the Muslim Student Association was created by the Muslim Brotherhood, which also created Hamas. But obviously there are people here with different points of view. Probably the most important issue before you is this issue. An attack has been made on your right to hear a different view. That's what the attack is. I understand you have to go through metal detectors to get here. I didn't ask for metal detectors. That's what your campus security put in place. This is terrible. This is an American campus. This used to be a country where people could voice different opinions without having their lives threatened. Very, very difficult system we live under. The benefits of it are that we don't go around killing each other. People from all over the world, if you go to their natural habitats, you'll find whether they're Arabs and Jews, Croats and Serbs, Protestant Irish or Catholic Irish, Pakistanis or Indians, they kill each other in other parts of the world, but they live here in peace. And why is that? It's because we agree to observe certain rules of civility, certain rules of political order. We respect the right of free speech. one of the ironies of this is that Muslim students associations claim that David Horowitz is threatening them by printing an ad. They feel fear. I'm the one who has to come here with bodyguards and police. I've never threatened anybody. I've never attacked anybody. I never tried to shut down a single Muslim Students Association event. I wouldn't think of obstructing a speaker who'd been invited to campus, no matter how much I disagreed with him. And it's a university campus. I mean, if you're in a ballpark, it's one thing. You don't want to do physical violence to the supporters of the other team, but you can yell out anything you like, and nobody stops you. But this is a university, and if you are always yelling, there are no ideas. You don't get to consider opinions. You don't get to learn anything. What a waste. You guys spend, I don't know, what is $3,000 a year, but it's your time. You could be out working a job and making money, but here you've got to be supported. So there's a big investment you have in an education. And whatever your point of view, you should be listening to speakers. And if you can't handle the truth, or you can't handle somebody who disagrees with you, just stay away. This university has rules against tearing down posters. And I hope those rules are enforced and that there's a disciplinary action for these activities. People have to learn, at least in this country, we still insist that people learn how to live together when you disagree violently about issues. And I hope this university acts on it. These are, in fact, fascist tactics. That is how the fascists destroyed the Weimar democracy, which was the political system in Germany between the wars. It happened to be the Nazis and the communists in alliance would go into meetings, particularly of the Social Democrats, because they were a working class party, and break up the meetings and beat people up and shout and obstruct. And that's how the Weimar democracy came to an end. I've used the term Islamofascism, and by the way, I mean, if somebody wants to answer that ad, of course, the Post isn't going to deny them space. The ad hasn't been answered because it can't be answered because it's factual. All you can do is scream epithets. Now, I have to say, since we're in the student union, the green room is on the floor where I think it is, I don't know, but we were wandering around, and outside the Muslim Students Association office, there was an anti-Semitic picture of me. And I say it's anti-Semitic because it looks just like the Nazi caricatures of Jews. I had a hooked nose. And a lot of lies about me were printed on it, but the lies are less offensive. That is a hate. And again, I know this university frowns on hate. I'd like to see it frown on hate directed against Jews and Christians as well as other groups. This battle, which is, and let me just say that so far, the Muslim Students Association, which is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood and is a fascist organization, has succeeded in stopping the printing of that ad in most college papers. We submitted it to 18. There are 4 that printed it, and at least 3 of them are under attack. This should be of concern to people, because at this point, the jihad in America is weak, but it is getting stronger. I chose the term Islamofascism because the movement that some people call radical Islam or militant Islam, have been attacked on 9/11 and at other times. In Lebanon in 1983 by Hezbollah. and other regions of the world, we've been attacked, and of course Europe has been attacked by groups that all subscribe to a set of doctrines that was developed in Egypt in the 1920s by the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, translated Mein Kampf into Arabic. And the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood was an admirer of Hitler, as was the founder of Palestinian nationalism, al-Husseini, who went to Berlin during the Second World War. He was a cousin of Arafat's. He's revered as the George Washington of the Palestinian people. He went to Berlin during the 1940s to recruit Arabs for Hitler and had plans to build an Auschwitz in the Middle East to exterminate the Jews there. And that is the agenda of Hamas and Hezbollah. There's a second Holocaust being mobilized in the Arab world. And unlike Hitler concealed the final solution, the murder of the Jews from the German people, because he thought they were too civilized and wouldn't be accepted. Whereas Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, shouts it from the rooftops, leads crowds, and it's, when there are genocides, leads crowds in the chants of death to Israel and death to America. And has said that we hope the Jews gather in Israel so we won't have to hunt them down worldwide. This is not a secret, this is public. Iran is building a nuclear weapon. There will be a war in the Middle East, but the war is an aggressive war by Muslim Arabs against the Jews and the Christians. You may not know this, but the Christian communities of the Middle East are rapidly declining under the siege from radical Islam. The goal of the Islamofascists is to build a global Islamic state. And I don't know if we've distributed our pamphlet on the Muslim Student Association and the Jihad Network, but this is a direct quote from the Muslim Brotherhood. They want a global Islamic state. Now, what does that mean? Well, in my Islamofascism Awareness Week, I had a poster of a Taliban soldier blowing the head off a Muslim woman with an AK-47. And the reporter who took, and it's a video, you can see it on YouTube, and the reporter who took the video asked, well, they were doing these executions on a soccer field that the United States gave to Afghanistan. And they asked the Taliban soldier why he was doing this, and why are you doing this on the soccer field? And he said, well, if the United States will give us a place to hold executions, we'll play soccer on the soccer field. The woman's crime was that somebody accused her of illicit sexual relations. I hope every woman in the room is registering this, because if you are under Islamic law, not only can you have your head blown off for illicit sexual relations, but you can't testify in your own defense, because in Sharia courts, women don't get to testify. And if you're raped under Sharia law, you have to have 4 men who witness that you were raped. Otherwise, you become the criminal because you have had sexual relations that are not sanctioned by the law, and therefore you can be stoned to death. The Islamic Jihad, which includes Hezbollah, Palestine Islamic Jihad, Egyptian Islamic Jihad, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and Al-Qaeda, is a totalitarian movement that will put the whole world under Sharia law. It is the greatest threat that we have ever faced, greater than Nazism and greater than communism, and much more evil. Never in the history of the world has there been a people that recruits its own children, puts bombs on them, and tells them to blow themselves up along with other innocent children. Only the Palestinian Muslims have done this. Only Hamas encourages this. In the parliament, well, here's how you know what Hamas is about. Israel was attacked 4 times. It's been attacked for 50 years now, but three aggressive wars where they were invaded by Egypt across Gaza with the cooperation of the Arabs that live in Gaza. That's why there was an Israeli military force in Gaza, to prevent another Egyptian invasion. There was a settlement in Gaza of 7,000 Jews. Now you have to understand, there are 1 million Arabs settled in Israel who enjoy more rights, they have more rights as Israeli Arabs than Arabs in any other Arab state, and then Muslims in any other Muslim country. They vote, they sit in the parliament. The Israeli Supreme Court has made many judgments in their favor, and they don't have to serve in the Israeli military, where all other citizens do. So they have a kind of, there are no Arabs who vote in free elections. None. Just as one instance.
Palestinians did.
Yeah, there was some free election.
Yeah, the UN verified.
Excuse me, listen, I take questions.
Freedom of speech.
Any other nitwits want to leave?
Do you want to leave? You're welcome to.
I think we have a volunteer there.
I'm not volunteering, I'm asking you to.
Well, shut your mouth.
Excuse me, I thought you talked about freedom of speech, freedom of interchange.
Would you remove this jerk?
Free speech, my God!
Just remove him. Maybe we have to have a lesson in manners. Bad manners. I will take questions at the end. That's the way it works. There were 7,000 Jewish citizens in Gaza. And the 7,000 Jews, 7,000 Jews in Gaza built first of all, they were all law-abiding citizens. Second of all, they built a horticulture industry that accounted for 10% of the entire gross national product of Gaza. 7,000 Jews, there are 1.2 million Arabs in Gaza. But the 7,000 Jews did 10%. You guys can do the arithmetic. If you wanted to make Gazan citizens, lift them out of poverty, one thing you would do, obviously, is you would import more Jews, because they could double your gross national product. This story of Gaza is the story of the Middle East, because that's what happened. The Jews got 3 little slivers of land that were not taken from Palestinians and were not taken from Arabs. The land which Israel was built on was taken from Turks. The Turkish Empire ruled the entire Middle Eastern region from the 16th century until 1920. And there was never a national movement there because all the states have been imposed, not all of them, but Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel were all created by the victors in World War II. So there are so many big lies that the Arab Nazis spread And one of them is that there's an occupation. There's a war because the Arab states, except for Egypt and Jordan, have refused to make peace with Israel since they invaded Israel in 1948. That's reality. Okay. So there's 7,000 Jews living in Gaza, and they produce 10% of the gross national product, and they're living peacefully. But the Israeli army had to evacuate them. Why? Because they would be killed. Because these are Nazis that we're dealing with. These are Jew haters and Jew killers. And the fact that, that on an American campus, an anti-Semitic cartoon could be posted in the student union tells you how brazen these Jew haters are and how supine the administration at this university is. You think if somebody put a caricature of a Muslim on the student union, there wouldn't be hell to pay?
And the paper. Excuse me, I'm sorry, sir.
Did I read my paper out there? I can read the ad that I put in the paper states that the Muslim Students Association was created by the Muslim Brotherhood. If that is false, all you have to do is run another ad. It's not an attack on anybody, it's a statement of fact. You don't understand the meaning of slander, my friend. In fact, do they teach you anything at this university? Do you know that truth? Well, anyway, truth is a defense against libel. Libel statements are not true. This is a true statement, and it was a statement without emotional charge on it. It's a reality. Back to the story of Gaza. So the Jews, the 7,000 Jews had to be evacuated or they would be slaughtered. An American Jew named Mortimer Zuckerman, who was the publisher of U.S. News and World Report, collected $14 million from American Jews in order to buy the greenhouses from the Jews who created them and give them to the Arabs. The first thing Hamas did on the first day the Israeli troops left was to destroy their own greenhouses. And then they started firing rockets into schoolyards. And there wasn't an Israeli soldier on Gazan soil. The suffering of the Palestinians is the work of Yasser Arafat, the PLO, and Hamas. Yasser Arafat died with $35 billion in a Swiss bank account. All of that money came from basically the United States and Israel. And it was earmarked for Palestinian refugees. There were 600,000 Palestinian refugees and 600,000 Jewish refugees from Arab countries and Iran. The largest ethnic community in Baghdad in the 1930s was the Jews. But the rulers of Iraq were Nazis, sided with Hitler. The Palestinians have sided with every American enemy in the last 60 years, beginning with the Nazis, then the communists, and now the Islamofascists.
Is this like comedy hour? Where do you get your
It's another ignoramus. Which one? Did they side?
everyone? Everything coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, well, look, we're going to remove. I can't have a dialogue like this. I can do this afterwards, because then I don't get to give a talk.
He's impeding the progress of normal.
The interesting thing about the answers to this ad and to anything that I've said is that every factual argument is met with a slander or a lie. And an accusation, we're just gonna, you know, it gets boring after a while to remove people.
We come to hear the speaker, not you. Out!
We came here to listen to him.
He's the invited speaker.
We didn't come to listen to you, so why don't you be quiet?
That's why there was no free election. It couldn't be a free election in Gaza. You get your head blown off if you vote the other way. Leftists have been, you know, ignorant for centuries now. I, you know, supported the biggest mass murders in human history throughout most of my lifetime. Now they're supporting another set of mass murderers. The movement within Islam, I mean, one of the real libel is that every time you criticize a fascist organization that happens to be Muslim, the fascists and their liberal friends accuse you of attacking Muslims. In fact, my Islamofascism Awareness Week was a defense of Muslims. It was a defense of all those women who are stoned to death, all those women who are killed in honor killings, the 140 million young girls who have their genitals sliced off to conform to a Muslim custom. That's who I defend. It's funny, it's a culture that only, again, just save your scholastic arguments for the question and answer period. If it's only a culture, why isn't every imam in the world denouncing it? Why isn't if you want to understand what the jihad is about, ask yourself why the women's studies department here and the feminists are not up in arms about 140 million girls having their genitals sliced off without anesthetic. And the answer is, they hate America more. America is the great Satan. This is what links SDS on this campus and the MSA. Common enemy, which is us. I spent 25 years in the left, and I cannot imagine that we were as brain dead as the remarks here tonight, or just the left generally. Inability to understand an argument, inability to listen to one, and to frame an answer to it. There is no occupation in the Middle East of Palestinian land because there is no Palestinian land. The Palestinian, I'm going to go over the history for those of you who are totally ignorant. All the countries around the Jordan, which is Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, and what could have been the Palestinian Bank on the Palestinian state on the West Bank if they wanted one, which they don't, were all created, as I said, after the First World War by the victors from the Turkish Empire, from lands that Turkey had ruled for 400 years. The Palestine Mandate, because Palestine, when I was young, that is in 1948, meant Israel. That's what everybody, the Palestine Symphony was the Israeli symphony. The Palestine Mandate was a region around the Jordan, about that big, which had been named by the Romans after the Philistines, who were red-headed Aegean sailors. There were no Arabs in the Middle East when that area was given the name Palestine. And it was given the name Palestine by the Romans because they had conquered the Jews and were dispersing them around the world and wanted to give their land, Judea and Samaria, which is now the West Bank, they wanted to name it after the Jews' enemies. It was just an extra fillip to their victory. The Arabs who lived in the Palestine area thought of themselves as Syrians or Assyrians. There was no national movement, just none. The PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, wasn't created until 1964. This is the Palestine Mandate, meaning the area around the Jordan, which the Romans had called Palestine. And you all know that British Prime Minister Balfour promised this land to the Jews. In 1922, Winston Churchill gave 80% of the Palestine Mandate to Jordan, with the stipulation that no Jews could live there. I couldn't own property in Jordan. It began as a racist state. 80% of the Palestine Mandate is Jordan. 70% of Jordan are Arabs from the Palestine region, i.e. Palestinians. But it's ruled by a Hashemite tribe. Why is there no liberation movement in Jordan? Why are the Palestinians not concerned about the fact that 70% of Jordan is Palestinian and yet it's ruled by Hashemites? And the answer is it's because they're not Jews and they're Arabs. And this is a racist war against the Jews. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with land and it has nothing to do with the state. 80% of the Palestine Mandate was given to Jordan, and the remaining 20% was divided between Arabs and Jews. The Arabs got historic Judea and Samaria. That's the Jewish homeland, was given to the Arabs. The Jews got 3 little slivers. One of them was the Negev Desert. 60% of the land they were given. They were given 3 little islands. It was 0.2% of the entire Arab landmass, but it was too much for racists, genocidal racists. And 5 Arab states attacked Israel the day it was born. The Israelis beat them, the 5 Arab states. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, or Jordan, maybe not Lebanon, remember. In 1949, the West Bank, that had been promised to the Palestinians, but rejected by the Arabs. You want to know who oppresses the Palestinians, it's first the Arabs, and it's second Hamas and the PLO.
You're very intelligent young people.
I'm going to open this mic soon, and you can be the first one and give one fact with a source that would contradict anything that I said.
Why don't you provide the source? This is like the whole state just to respond to all your lies.
Get their pictures.
Hey, will security do your job? And what's
It's okay. I'm just gonna, it's my fault for even letting this get this far. The Islamofascists have learned a lot from the communists, and one of the things is creating fun organizations. The Muslim Students Association, as I say, poses as a cultural religious group, but it is a political group. If it were just a cultural religious group, it wouldn't be so active in trying to shut down speeches by people it disagrees with. I mean, of course, I'm not the only one that attacked Walid Shoebat.
All my
you guys want to do is hijack every event that doesn't suit your mind. I'll advertise your event. There is an event they're doing, the MSA Student Association. They're doing an event outside there to respond to all my lies. Maybe through my lies you found the truth tonight, but they want to go over there and tell you the real truth, so maybe you'll get the lies. So you're invited. You can go. Thank God I live in America.
Walid Shoebat, who was a former Palestinian terrorist who has had second thoughts. Somebody who would, might think people would be really interested in hearing, but not the Muslim Students Association, because it's not a Muslim Students Association. It is a jihad association, and it is a political party. Nobody thinks of college Republicans as representing all Americans, and the Muslim Students Association certainly doesn't represent Muslims. Most of the world's Muslims are like everybody else that want to live in peace and want to get along. But there is a very powerful movement within Islam, led by Al-Qaeda, but even more importantly, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is at war with the West. And it's at war with the West because our women are free and theirs are not, because we live in a tolerant society for the most part, except for some loudmouths. And theirs is not. So we, by existing, are a threat to them. But the serious danger to us is what I would call the soft jihad, which is the jihad of organizations that use our tolerance to silence critics. I have never attacked, and I've never been attacked a single time by a single leftist or a single Muslim over the facts in that ad, or the facts in the speeches I gave at Islamofascism Awareness. We put out a ton of literature. You can go up to terrorismawareness.org and get our pamphlets and our literature. None of them is answered, because there is no answer, or there might be an answer, but certainly the people who are attacking us, they only attack us as Islamophobes. We hate Muslims. In fact, as I said, we are defending Muslims, because the greatest victims of these Islamofascists are Muslims. In Iran, in Yemen, in Libya, in Sadr City, in Iraq before America got there, in Afghanistan under the Taliban. Those are the victims, Muslim victims. And the term Islamofascism was actually invented by Muslims in Algeria who were being slaughtered by Al-Qaeda of the Maghreb during the 1990s. Like everybody who shouted out at this speech should be put on probation, then suspended, and then expelled.
That's amazing.
That's American.
Before we go, can we remove that jerk before we... And I hope that security here takes their names and reports them to the administration.
You got it. There he goes.
Now, there's a mic. Now there's a mic, so you can demonstrate your ignorance for everybody.
Oh, leading by example.
I came here to this lecture, to bombard you with, all these questions and attack you, but I realized that you ain't even worth it.
I will predict that we get a series. This is so typical and so boring.
Yeah.
Don't you people understand how absurd you look when you cannot answer? You can't even formulate.
Before you jump to conclusions.
I'm talking. In case you didn't notice. Well, just because the mic is, I didn't talk into the mic when she was talking. You don't talk when I'm talking.
Right there.
Yeah, the form of this is that you ask a question. But I hope well, of course, everybody who's in their right sense of mind and hasn't had their brain glued up by ideology can hear that not a single person is answering an argument or asking a question that would reveal anything new. All we get is name calling. So go ahead. See if you can ask a question.
You refer to the Muslim Student Association as a jihad network, and you also say something about soft jihad. Can you define the term jihad and soft jihad?
Yeah, jihad means holy war. And what I said was that the Muslim Students Association was created by the Muslim Brotherhood and is part of its jihad network. And people who are interested in what the Muslim Brotherhood thinks, in addition, you can read the charter of Hamas, which is a genocidal charter. You can read Hamas's statements after 9/11 and see what they think of Americans. You can read Hassan Obama, you can read Saeed Qutb, or any number of Muslim Brotherhood speakers, or you can go up. I have a website called discoverthenetworks.org, which is an encyclopedia of the left. Somebody here on my website. An encyclopedia of the left, and you look up the Muslim Students Association or the Muslim Brotherhood, and you can get a short course in what they think. And unlike the people here on Discover the Networks and in everything that I write, when I characterize a group, I quote what they say, their leaders say, I show what their actions are, and then the reader can draw a conclusion. Here we only get conclusions. There's no argument. Go ahead. It's holy war is what jihad means. I know that
Hey sir, I'm not actually associated with the MSA, I just want to put that out there. And I also have a two-pronged question, and that is basically why you've chosen to not list any citations or even your name or an ad for the event on the ad that you placed in the paper. And secondly, why in the white pamphlet you had on the table with the UC, Conservative Union Group today, why in the back there was only websites listed as sources? Like Discovery Network, you said, you're actually the only person who has a name on that website, and they contact
I don't understand that. Go ahead.
That's your biggest source, pretty much. I mean, they're all websites. All 176 of them are all websites, and most of them come from some F magazine. I don't remember the exact title.
Front page.
Yeah. What was it?
Front page. Frontpagemagazine.com.
Frontpagemag.com, everybody. And it's Discovery Network too. And I'm just wondering why you think that you deserve to be paid to come around and cite yourself and internet sources and not any books or any real historical precedent.
Okay.
That's my question.
That's good. Nice. That's a good one.
Well, the answer to your questions are, we didn't put sources in the ad because the ad was an ad for the pamphlet. We put sources in the pamphlet. Then if you bothered to go up to the websites, you will find that Discover the Networks is not the source, and neither, if you go on Discover the Networks, what you get is an index of articles, which you can actually read up there. That is really articles on, so there are, well, I mean, it's perfect. He gets up here and says, there are no sources, okay, enough. Okay, so this is goodbye. A big lie of absolute nothing.
What do your source say to you?
I'm going to just shut this down because I can't talk to 14 people at once. So this gentleman accused me of not having sources. Then he accused me of having only myself as a source. Both of those are false, completely false statements. And the third one was, why do I think I should be paid to get here? Because I'm about 1 billion times smarter than you are.
I just want to introduce myself real quick. My name is Felicia. I'm Muslim, and I chose to be Muslim. And I chose to be Muslim. I chose to wear the scarf. Nobody forced me to. And you said that the Western women are free versus, and that's a threat to Muslim women or Arab women or something like that. I just wanted to say that the Western women here get boob jobs and nose jobs all the time. And I don't think it makes them feel better. I think it just makes them look better for the man's ideal. And yet you're saying that the whole genital circumcision is a bad thing. How when majority of those women actually choose to get it done. And they do organize, no they do, I've researched this before. They do organize hospitals in Egypt where the women can go in and choose to get it done. So where did you get that from?
Do you know the name, do you know who Ayaan Hirsi Ali is?
No, who's that?
Okay, she's a world famous Muslim who was mutilated genitally when she was a child. Most of these operations are conducted against children, not people of the age of consent. And you should read her book and learn something. I didn't say that women of the West were a threat to Muslim women. I said that the Islamofascists, whom you seem to have fallen in with in this audience, are a threat to women in the West. If you're comparing a boob job to having your genitals sliced off with a knife without an anesthetic and in non-sterile conditions, so that you don't have, and the purpose of it is to deprive you of pleasure. I don't even know how to deal with that. You're not thinking straight, I'll tell you that. Go ahead.
Shariaism / Caliphatism in Islam and Zionism in Judaism, compare and contrast, and please explain the Breslau-Guben incident and how that affected
the what?
Breslau-Guben incident. You haven't read Barbara Tuchman's Guns of August?
What?
Yeah. Haven't you read that book?
No.
Well, then you're fairly, I would say, your background in terms of reading the literature in this area is poor, and you need to read it. I want to explain that.
Okay, Barbara Tuchman's book is about how the First World War began. The book I actually read is called A Peace to End All Peace, which is about the peace that was made, which is what the Middle East mess is about. So I think I read the right book.
Allow me to explain the incident.
No, I don't want to hear the incident. It's not, because you asked another...
Ignorance is bliss.
Yes, ignorance is bliss.
Wow.
There's a line there of about 30 people, unless I'm not seeing things clearly. I don't want to go into the origins of the First World War in a discussion like this.
And how the Turks got on the wrong side.
Oh. Great. So what's that? Has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I came here to this meeting not really knowing what's going on as far as the history and everything, and I really still don't. But there is an enemy. I'm not saying it's Muslim. It's Al-Qaeda. It's the terrorists out there. And they are enjoying the fact that us in a society like this, that we're fighting, that we can't carry on a decent, civilized discussion. We have to remember that despite whether we disagree with each other, despite what viewpoint you come from, whether you're Muslim, whether you're not, we do have a common enemy out there. And if we fail to recognize that, if we fail to ignore them, then we're just bringing disaster on ourselves here. So I want to say.
You say we need to fight off each other.
Hi, I have two questions. The first being, when you see it at other universities and institutions, how do you compare the reaction of those listening, the audience, to what you've experienced here?
This is one of the worst.
It's just people yelling.
Oh,
What ways?
I mean, because we have to have security, just understand, there was a time in this country when you could go to a speaker at a college campus and not go through metal detectors and have police all around. This is a disgrace. Just the fact that the valuable time of security on this campus has to be taken up for election. That is an absolute disgrace. And most of the places where I speak, people have sometimes somebody will shout out, but the vast majority have the decency and the university manners to listen and then to, conduct a discussion.
It's like the third or fourth guy getting kicked out.
Everybody in this room, you can go up to discoverthenetworks.org and find out that David Horowitz is not the source of the information up there. I mean, I have some articles, but there are thousands of articles, maybe tens of thousands. It's like saying that, I don't know who the guy is who created Wikipedia, but is accusing him of being the source of all the information up there, because it all comes from Wikipedia. Go ahead.
You sat here and you said you didn't bash Muslims. You said you protected them somehow. I don't know how the hell you did that. I basically, they're limiting me to 30 seconds, so I can't say what I want to say. You disrespected, like, probably half of the back of the room here. You got a lot of supporters up there. I'm not up here to disrespect you. I am a Muslim, and as a Muslim, I would not disrespect you. I'm not going to lower my religion for your pleasure. I'm not going to let you get what you want out of me. But what I gotta say, my question, sir, do you believe in hell? Answer the question, so yes or no, it's not that hard.
Please finish your speech. If I believe in hell,
do you believe in
I'm
hell?
going there.
Do you believe in hell? Yeah. That's my
Not your hell.
not my hell. Yeah, what's your hell?
Not your hell.
I don't get that. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Do you advocate the dismantling of the Muslim Student Association?
What I would like to see, actually, we printed these ads as a way of starting a discussion. I submitted to 100 Muslim Students Associations, including the one here, a declaration against genocide. And the declaration asked the Muslim Students Association to condemn Hamas, to condemn Hezbollah, and to repudiate this saying of the Prophet Muhammad. Understand that the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, which are part of the religious texts and are up on Muslim Students Association sites, this particular one, were collected 200 years after his death. So reasonable people might conclude that there might have been some error in transmission. The statement is a genocidal statement. It says that the redemption comes only when Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. When the Jews hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and the trees cry out, "O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." We asked the Muslim Students Association to repudiate that, to condemn Hamas and to condemn Hezbollah. We got no response out of 100 Muslim Students Associations. So my answer to you is I am opening this discussion. It is going to go on, Believe me. Right now, I believe that an organization that obstructs speakers that are invited by other organizations is violating, as has happened here tonight, is violating the most fundamental tenet of any university, and that they should be defunded for doing that. And anybody who puts up anybody who posts on their bulletin board a hate cartoon, an anti-Semitic cartoon, that group should be suspended. Thank you for asking the first question tonight, so to speak.
Shalom and Islam alaikum to everyone in the room. But the question to the impending, doom of Muslim upon Americans or the other countries.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The supposed impended, encroachment of Muslims upon the rest of the world, perhaps.
I didn't say that. I'm sure.
Okay. I'm not here to argue. I'm just asking you to ask a really simple question. How do you explain Jewish minorities living in Iran and then not fleeing Iran in this supposed Islam?
All 10 of them?
This fascism state that is. I mean, look at the CI World Factbook and understand the populations that are living and existing in the modern society of Iran. You can't have.
I didn't bring the statistics here, but if you look at the numbers, if you look at the numbers of Jews who lived in Iran before 1948, and the number who live now, you will find a precipitous, catastrophic decline in the Jewish population in Iran. And even Stalin knew how to put together a Potemkin village. Some people would think things were going well. Come on. I mean, hey, look at the statistics if you want to ask.
How much time?
And I have never, in the course of this evening or anywhere, said, that the threat that I'm dealing with is Islam.
Thank you.
It's radical Islam, but it includes probably, if 10% of Muslims support Osama bin Laden, which is the low-end figure, or 50%, which is the high end, that's somewhere between 150 and 750 million people. That's a lot of people. It'd be nice to have a Muslim who's not a member of the conservative union stand up here and condemn Hamas as a terrorist organization and a genocidal one. Anybody want to volunteer? That's certainly. Yeah, I said who's not a member of the. Well, good for you. Did you condemn Hamas? Hamas.
I don't know too much about Hamas.
I believe you. That's okay. I think I said I believed you. I believe you, and let me say, I think that you should inform yourself more. But that's an honest statement, and I applaud it. I know, but you need to familiarize yourself. If you listen to me, if you are an organization, the Nazis did good things. The saying during the Second World War was Mussolini made the trains run on time. The mafia contributes to hospitals. Hamas has a whole social as a whole social network. I can't hear what this young woman is saying because somebody whose mother didn't teach them manners is yelling at my right. Your mother teach you to yell out? Look at all these people on the right.
Shut up! I'm gonna punch you in your shit.
Oh, wow.
I actually think there should be a required course in manners at this college.
Hey, you're welcome to take it along with me.
What happens when people have no what happens when people have no self-discipline is that you get anarchy, which is kind of close to what we're getting here. When you have anarchy, the only way to restore order is by force.
Oh, no, excuse me.
This is just pathetic.
No, you're pathetic. How about that one?
Let me guess.
Let you guess what? Let you guess what?
Are you a student here?
Let you guess what? That's what I want. Let you guess what? Hold on. Let you guess what? That's what I want to know. Let you guess what?
It's just ridiculous.
Next question.
Okay, these are there, and you wouldn't see our still saying things. They're not aligned. I'm not going to react still. I'm not going to run the bus.
Bye.
Are you a student here?
Yes, I am.
Good for you.
Hello.
Everybody else got something to say that ain't in fucking line. Why can't I say what I want to say? Everybody else running that goddamn mouth about me.
I have been a writer. I've been a writer for 50 years. It's almost 50 years since I published my first book. My record is out there. Anybody can read it. And, for people who can read, the people who wrote the little handout from the Muslim Students Association handout, those people obviously can't read, or don't bother to. Because, what I have to say, I've been a civil rights activist all my life. I marched on my first civil rights demonstration in 1948, before most of the students' parents were born. And I have been marching ever since. So, it's pathetic.